The day a wedding pavilion landed on my farmland, I turned it into a goat barn. The morning sun was barely up when I stepped onto my porch, coffee in hand, and froze. There, in the middle of my alfalfa field, stood a white pavilion that looked like it had been ripped from a wedding magazine. Sheer curtains fluttered in the breeze, fairy lights twinkled, and a crystal chandelier, yes, a chandelier glinted under the dawn. Inside, lounging on pastel cushions with a glass of lemon water, was Deborah, the neighborhood's self-appointed queen of etiquette. She glanced at me, smiled like I was a peasant interrupting her court, and said, "Oh, Henry, it's just a few feet onto your land. You weren't using it anyway." That was the moment I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was a declaration of war. My name's Henry Thompson, and I've been farming my 20 acres on the edge of Maplewood Estates for 3 decades. It's a quiet life: chickens, crops, and the occasional coyote to shoo off. Maplewood, a gated community with manicured lawns and a homeowners association, HOA, run like a small dictatorship, sits next door. Deborah, a prominent HOA board member, had a reputation for bending rules to suit her whims. She'd once fined a neighbor for planting unsightly marigolds and tried to ban wind chimes for being too bohemian. But building a pavilion on my land? That was a new level of audacity. I approached the structure, ducking under curtains that reeked of jasmine and entitlement. "Deborah," I said, keeping my voice steady, "this is my property. Why's your wedding chapel here?" She barely looked up from her booksome nonsense about lunar vibes and replied, "Henry, my backyard lacks the tranquility of your field. I needed this spot for my book club. Besides, my grandfather owned this land 50 years ago, so it's practically mine." I pointed to the survey stake marking my property line, 6 feet from her pavilion's base. "That's the boundary. You're on my side. Move it by tonight." She laughed a sharp, condescending cackle and went back to her book. I could have lost it right there, but I didn't. I'd learned long ago that hotheads lose battles. Smart men win wars. That evening, I dug out my property deed, survey maps, and aerial photos from a drone I'd flown last spring. The pavilion was 10 feet over the linear clear trespass. Over a beer, I jotted one word in my notebook: goats. My dad used to keep goats in that field, and the soil was perfect for them. If Deborah wanted to claim my land, she'd get the full farm experience. I called my cousin, Tom, a contractor with a knack for theatrics, and told him my plan. He was in before I finished the sentence. The next day, I hammered stakes along the property line, one right by the pavilion's leg. Deborah, hosting a loud brunch with her HOA cronies, asked what I was doing. "Big plans," I said, smiling. "Stay tuned." I applied for a livestock shelter permit at the county office. The clerk, a grizzled guy named Carl, grinned when he saw the location. "You teaching Deborah a lesson, Henry?" I nodded. "Justice with hooves." He stamped the permit and wished me luck. Deborah's brunches grew louder: flutes, candles, even a poodle in a bow tie. I ignored her, marking more land with neon tape. By week's end, Tom and I had ordered lumber, troughs, and a gate. I contacted a local breeder for 5 goats, including a feisty one named Mabel who could out-stubborn a mule. The stage was set. When the goats arrived, it was like unleashing a furry hurricane. Mabel charged the pavilion, nibbling a curtain. The others followed, trampling cushions and knocking over a bird feeder. Deborah's scream could have shattered glass. She stormed over, clutching her pearls. "Remove these filthy animals. This is my sanctuary." I leaned on the fence. "It's a goat barn now, Deborah. I've got permits. Feel free to visit, but bring boots." Her face turned beet red, and she stomped off, vowing to end this. The HOA sent a letter accusing me of environmental hostility and demanding I stop. I responded with copies of my deed, survey, and permit, plus a note. "Thanks for the pavilion donation. The goats love it." The county inspector, a no-nonsense woman named June, showed up after Deborah claimed I was running an illegal farm. She checked my permit, inspected the goats' water, and said, "You're good, Henry." Deborah's got no case. When Deborah, dressed like a safari guide, pleaded her case to June, the inspector cut her off. "It's his land, his pavilion now. Move on." Deborah didn't move on. She installed speakers on her property, blasting opera at 6 a.m. to drive the goats mad. Instead, Mabel started bobbing her head to the music, and the others joined in, prancing like they were auditioning for a musical. A neighbor filmed it, and the video, Dancing Goats in Deborah's Pavilion, went viral, hitting 80,000 views in days. People drove from miles away to see the Goat Palace. Donations poured in blankets, treats, even a goat-sized hat for Mabel. Deborah's plan had backfired spectacularly. The HOA escalated, nailing a cease notice to my fence, citing noise pollution and commercial activity. They had no jurisdiction. Me land wasn't part of Maplewood, but I made it official. I laminated my deed and survey, stapled them to the barn, and added a sign. HOA free zone. Trespassers get goat kisses. Deborah emailed, accusing me of mockery. I didn't reply. I was too busy building. Tom and I upgraded the pavilion, solar fans, a ramp, and a shaded pen. Kids visited on weekends, learning about goats. A local paper ran a story. Deborah's folly becomes Henry's triumph. The HOA tried one last stunt, showing up with folding tables and a banner about community standards. I called the sheriff, a friend named Mike, who arrived and shut them down. "This is Henry's land," he told Deborah. "You're trespassing. Go home." She hissed, "You'll regret making me your enemy." I shrugged. "You did that yourself." The community turned on Deborah. Her HOA stunts had cost them legal fees and embarrassment. A recall vote ousted her from the board. Neighbors apologized, some bringing pies. One couple said, "Maplewood's not all like her." The Goat Palace became a local gem. An animal welfare group nominated it for an award, and at the ceremony, with reporters and the mayor present, I thanked the goats and Deborah's generous donation. The crowd roared. Then Deborah appeared, wild-eyed, shoving through chairs. "You ruined me," she screamed. "This was my haven." I stepped forward. "You built on my land, ignored warnings, and tried to bully me. You ruined yourself." She froze, speechless, as the crowd stared. She fled, and that was the last I saw of her. Word spread that she sold her house and moved, her name now a punchline. The Goat Palace thrived. We added a garden for kids to learn farming. A grant turned it into a community center. Mabel, now a star, greeted visitors with headbutts. The pavilion, once a symbol of arrogance, stood as proof that patience and principle outlast pride. I'd never wanted revenge, just my land back. Deborah gave me something better, a legacy. As I locked the gate each night, the quiet wasn't just peace. It was a victory. Deborah thought she could take what wasn't hers. I showed her what happens when you cross a farmer with a deed, some goats, and a plan. What do you think? Have you faced bullies like Deborah or found justice like Henry? Share your stories in the comments, especially about standing up to unfairness or aggression. Was Henry's approach too harsh or just right? Let's hear your take.